Revenge is one of the oldest human impulses. Across history, there have been moments when payback turned unimaginably brutal, leaving behind scenes so chilling they still haunt investigators, witnesses, and entire communities. These are not simple crimes. They are calculated acts of retaliation, where fear, betrayal, and rage collided with deadly precision. Today, we're diving into 5 of the most horrifying revenge deaths ever recorded, each one a grim reminder of how far people will go when the desire for vengeance consumes them. On May 23, 2014, a quiet coastal town near the University of California, Santa Barbara, was ripped apart by one of the most horrifying acts of revenge in modern memory. Isla Vista, usually filled with the laughter of students and the casual hum of late classes, became the stage for a meticulously planned massacre. The orchestrator was 22-year-old Elliot Rodger, the son of a Hollywood filmmaker who had grown up in privilege yet carried a festering hatred beneath the surface. Rodger's resentment toward women had been building for years, fueled by rejection, envy, and a sense of entitlement. Diagnosed in childhood with developmental disorders, he had struggled to connect with people, and his isolation only deepened his anger. Over time, he became obsessed with his own perceived injustices, venting in online forums filled with misogynistic ideology and chronicling his rage in journals and videos. These dark writings culminated in a manifesto, My Twisted World, in which he openly plotted a day of retribution against a world he believed had wronged him. In the months leading up to the massacre, Rodger carefully prepared. Between 2012 and 2014, he legally purchased 3 semi-automatic pistols and ammunition, honed his aim at gun ranges, and practiced stabbing motions on pillows and bed sheets. Disturbing videos he uploaded to YouTube caught the attention of a mental health worker, but nothing stopped him. His parents, unaware of the scale of his plans, would later learn the devastating truth too late. That evening, Rodger struck inside his Isla Vista apartment. Armed with 2 hunting knives, he ambushed his roommates, Weihan David Wong and Chongyuan James Hong, killing them with brutal precision. George Chen, a friend visiting the apartment, was stabbed 94 times in a frenzy of violence. After the attacks, Rodger calmly cleaned himself, wrote a final journal entry, and uploaded a chilling video to YouTube, announcing his hatred toward the world and his plan to punish women for rejecting him and men for living lives he envied. Then he drove to the Alpha Phi sorority house, a target chosen because he deemed its residents the most beautiful women on campus. Locked out and frustrated, he opened fire on 3 women walking nearby. 2, Catherine Cooper and Veronica Weiss, were killed despite desperate efforts to save them. A 3rd survived, but with life-changing injuries. He continued his rampage, shooting through the windows of a deli and killing Christopher Michaels Martinez, a 20-year-old student, before barreling through the streets, striking pedestrians and exchanging gunfire with police. The terror lasted barely 10 minutes, leaving 6 dead and 14 injured. Rodger ended his life after crashing his vehicle, leaving a town reeling and a community forever scarred. The aftermath was devastating. Families sued local authorities and property managers, claiming clear warning signs were ignored. Rodger's writings became a disturbing inspiration for extremist incel communities, alarming law enforcement and researchers. In response, California passed the nation's first red flag law, allowing authorities to remove firearms from individuals deemed dangerous. More than a decade later, the Isla Vista massacre remains one of the most chilling, revenge-driven killings ever recorded, a haunting reminder of how entitlement, hatred, and inaction can converge into unimaginable tragedy. The quiet suburban streets of Markham, Ontario seemed peaceful, but beneath the surface, dark currents ran through one family's life. Jennifer Pan, 24, the daughter of Vietnamese Chinese immigrants, had grown up under relentless pressure. Her parents, Beatrice and Bin Pan, had fled Vietnam as refugees and built a household of discipline and high expectations, demanding excellence in academics, music, and sports. Every move Jennifer made was scrutinized. Dating, parties, or rebellion were forbidden. Outwardly, she appeared perfectly polished, obedient, and beautiful, but behind closed doors, resentment festered, simmering like a storm waiting to break. Jennifer cultivated a secret life. She forged report cards, lied about attending university, and maintained a hidden relationship with her boyfriend, Daniel Wong. Over time, the web of deception grew darker, twisted by a desire for freedom and control. On the night of November 8, 2010, the Pan household erupted into terror. Jennifer, who had meticulously orchestrated every detail, unlocked the door to 3 armed men she had hired. They entered under the guise of a robbery, dragging her parents to the basement. Heads covered, her parents were shot repeatedly. Beatrice Pan was killed instantly, struck in the head. Ben survived, but was left permanently blind. Jennifer emerged, seemingly unharmed, claiming she had been tied up and forced to witness the attack, even dialing 911 as her father screamed from the basement. At first, police treated it as a random home invasion, puzzled by the untouched valuables and Jennifer's safety. But the truth was far more sinister. Investigators uncovered the meticulous planning behind the massacre. Jennifer had orchestrated the attack to seize control of her parents' finances and escape the strict confines of her upbringing. Her boyfriend, Daniel Wong, along with Lenford Crawford, David Milvaganam, and Eric Carty, played roles in arranging the deadly plot, though who fired the fatal shots remains unknown. Text messages exchanged in the hours leading up to the attack, along with her father's testimony, revealed the manipulation and calculated deceit behind every move. Ben, recovering from a coma, recalled seeing Jennifer speaking casually with one of the intruders, an image that shattered her story of fear and helplessness. The evidence painted a chilling portrait: years of resentment, a desire for autonomy twisted into lethal vengeance, and financial greed that made murder seem like a solution. The legal fallout was complex and drawn out. Jennifer and her co-conspirators were convicted of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy, receiving life sentences with parole eligibility after 25 years. Eric Carty later died in prison, while appeals stretched over a decade, culminating in 2025 when the Supreme Court of Canada upheld much of the case but ordered retrials on some charges. Through it all, the consequences were devastating. Beatrice Pan was laid to rest in November 2010, while Ben's injuries barred him from attending her funeral. Felix Pan, Jennifer's younger brother, severed all contact with her, obtaining a restraining order. The story of Jennifer Pan remains one of Canada's most disturbing revenge killings, a stark reminder of how deception, resentment, and obsession can erupt into unspeakable violence even within the most intimate family bonds. In 2005, Gazala Khan, an 18-year-old Danish woman of Pakistani descent, lived under the suffocating weight of her family's rigid expectations. Born in Denmark on October 29, 1986, she spent much of her formative years in Pakistan, helping care for her ailing grandfather while navigating the strict codes of a traditional Punjabi household. Quiet and introspective, Gazala had always been torn between duty and desire, between the life her family demanded of her and the life she yearned to live. Her family, steeped in conservative values, expected obedience, and their watchful eyes left little room for personal freedom. Every choice, every action, was measured against the invisible bar of honor, obedience, and reputation. Amid these suffocating restrictions, a spark of hope appeared in the form of Imal Khan, an Afghan-born man living in Denmark. Over 3 years, their love blossomed in secrecy. They met discreetly in Copenhagen, exchanged furtive messages, and nurtured a bond that had to remain hidden from a family whose wrath Gazala knew could be deadly. To her, Imal represented freedom, choice, and the life she had been denied. To her family, however, he was an affront to their culture, a challenge to the rules that governed every aspect of their lives. Her fears were tragically justified. In February 2005, when Gazala confessed her feelings to her mother, she was met with brutal punishment. Both her mother and older brother, Akhtar Abbas, physically attacked her, leaving her bruised and shaken. The family, seeking to correct her defiance, isolated her from the outside world, cutting off the fragile connections that had given her hope. Yet, Gazala refused to relinquish her desire for independence and love. On September 5, 2005, she fled her home to live with Imal and stay with friends, seeking safety from the suffocating oppression she could no longer endure. She repeatedly sought police protection, desperate for intervention, but her pleas went unanswered. On September 21, 2005, Gazala and Imal quietly married at the registry office in Middle Fart, claiming their right to live as they chose, however briefly. For a moment, it seemed as if the couple could escape the shadow of her family's control. But the reprieve was short-lived. 2 days later, on September 23rd, the threat that had loomed over Gazala her entire life became terrifyingly real. Lured to Slagos railway station under the pretense of reconciliation, the couple walked into a meticulously planned trap. The ambush was orchestrated by her father, Ghulam Abbas, and 9 relatives and associates, who coordinated their movements with precision through constant mobile communication. As Gazala and Imal approached, Akhtar Abbas stepped forward and opened fire. Gazala was killed instantly, collapsing in the station square in full view of horrified bystanders. Imal was struck twice in the abdomen, fighting for his life, but survived after emergency surgery. A bystander narrowly avoided being hit by stray bullets, a random brush with death underscoring the chaotic brutality of the attack. Investigations revealed the calculated and chilling nature of the murder. Ghulam Abbas, a 57-year-old taxi driver who had lived in Denmark since 1970, had ordered the killing to restore what he saw as the family's lost honor. Other family members and friends, including uncles Waliat Khan and Agar Ali, Aunt Pervin Khan, and associates Ghulam Ahmed, Ansurik Iqbal, and Nawed Sharif, played active roles in tracking the couple, coordinating their movements, and executing the deadly trap. Phone records detailed hundreds of calls in the days leading up to the attack, painting a portrait of careful planning, driven by patriarchal obsession and rigid adherence to a code of honor that sanctioned violence as punishment. The legal aftermath was equally historic. On June 27, 2006, Denmark's Eastern High Court convicted all 9 participants of murder and attempted murder. Sentences ranged from 8 years to life imprisonment, with several non-Danish citizens permanently deported. Ghulam Abbas received a life sentence, while Akhtar Abbas was sentenced to 16 years. The court emphasized the premeditated nature of the crime, setting a precedent in Western Europe for how honor killings would be prosecuted in the future. Gazala Khan's death remains one of Europe's most notorious honor-based revenge murders, a tragic reminder of how patriarchal control and rigid cultural codes can escalate into deadly violence. Amy Bishop had long been recognized for her intelligence and ambition, a Harvard-trained geneticist and assistant professor at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. By 2010, however, the brilliance that had earned her academic respect was shadowed by growing tension and instability. Colleagues described her as unpredictable, abrasive, and at times deeply unsettling, a woman whose sharp mind was matched by an equally sharp resentment toward anyone she believed had wronged her. At 44, married and the mother of 4, Bishop faced the loss of her academic career after being denied tenure in March 2009. Appeals had failed, leaving her position and her professional identity on the line. Those around her noticed a dangerous shift. She became increasingly fixated on perceived slights, professional obstacles, and the idea that her brilliance had been unjustly overlooked. The stage was set for an act that would shock her colleagues and the academic world alike. On February 12, 2010, Bishop attended a routine biology department faculty meeting in the Shelby Center for Science and Technology. About 12 colleagues were present. For the first 30 or 40 minutes, she appeared calm, almost ordinary, until the moment shattered everything. Without warning, she drew a Ruger P95 9mm handgun and began firing methodically at those closest to her. 3 faculty members, Dr. Gopi Podila, Dr. Maria Ragland Davis, and Dr. Adriel Johnson, were killed instantly. 3 others, including Dr. Joseph Lay, Assistant Professor Luis Cruz Vera, and staff aide Stephanie Montecchiolo, sustained serious injuries. Survivors later described the attack as execution style, noting how Bishop targeted her victims deliberately rather than shooting at random. Deborah Morariti, a biochemistry professor, narrowly avoided becoming a seventh victim. When Bishop's handgun jammed, Morariti lunged, grabbing at her legs and helping others push Bishop from the room and block the door. Bishop was apprehended shortly afterward outside the building, reportedly in denial, insisting her colleagues were still alive. The shooting was not an isolated act of violence. Bishop's past revealed a disturbing pattern of aggression and erratic behavior. In 1986, she had fatally shot her 18-year-old brother Seth in Massachusetts, a death initially ruled accidental, though later scrutiny suggested probable cause for criminal charges. In 1993, she and her husband had been questioned in connection with a pipe bomb incident targeting a former supervisor and additional confrontations, including a 2002 altercation at a restaurant, reflected her long-standing difficulty managing anger. Within UAH, Bishop had developed a reputation for unsettling classroom behavior, alienating students, dismissing graduate researchers from her lab, and generating multiple complaints over her teaching style. Though her academic accomplishments were notable, interpersonal conflicts and disputes over tenure had left her increasingly isolated, frustrated, and bitter. The aftermath of the Huntsville shootings was devastating. Bishop faced charges of capital murder and attempted murder. In September 2012, she pleaded guilty, avoiding the death penalty, and was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Survivors, including Joseph Lay, bore lifelong physical and psychological scars, Lay suffering traumatic brain injury and partial blindness. In response, UAH implemented sweeping campus safety reforms, including mandatory background checks for faculty, emergency alert systems, and the creation of a behavioral evaluation and threat assessment team to monitor staff exhibiting concerning behaviors. Memorial services honored Podila, Davis, and Johnson, drawing thousands who mourned the loss of brilliant lives cut short. Bishop's actions reopened scrutiny of her past, including her brother's death, illustrating the devastating consequences of unresolved psychological instability compounded by resentment and access to firearms. Across academia, the tragedy of February 12, 2010, remains one of the most horrific revenge-driven killings in recent history, a stark reminder of how personal grievances and professional disputes, when left unchecked, can erupt into unimaginable violence. In the quiet, affluent suburb of Friendswood, Texas, Dr. Clara Harris seemed to have it all. A respected dentist born in Colombia, she had built a successful life with her husband, orthodontist Dr. David Lynn Harris, raising twin sons and David's teenage daughter from a previous marriage. On the surface, their lives were the picture of stability and comfort, a family admired in their community. But beneath that facade, their marriage was fraying, torn apart by suspicion, betrayal, and mounting obsession. By mid-2002, Clara's doubts about David's fidelity had evolved into an all-consuming fixation. What began as uncertainty became a relentless, burning anger. On the night of July 24, 2002, that anger exploded in a way no one could have anticipated. After uncovering David's affair with his receptionist, Gail Bridges, Clara acted with meticulous determination, following the trail laid out by the private investigator she had hired to watch him. She drove to the Nassau Bay Hilton, the very hotel where she and David had been married a decade earlier, her heart racing, mind consumed with rage. Inside the lobby, witnesses saw Clara confront Bridges, striking her in a fit of fury before hotel staff intervened and escorted her outside. But the confrontation did not end there. Moments later, as David and Bridges exited the building, Clara accelerated her silver Mercedes-Benz across the parking lot. The first impact sent David flying roughly 25 feet. Prosecutors later revealed that Clara circled the lot, crossed two grassy medians, and ran over him again, deliberately, stopping the car on top of his body. Her 16-year-old stepdaughter, Lindsay, sat in the passenger seat, screaming for her to stop, powerless as the violence unfolded before her eyes. The entire incident was captured on videotape by the very investigators Clara had hired, footage that would become a central piece of the prosecution's case. David was pronounced dead at the scene, and Clara was arrested shortly afterward. The nation was stunned. A woman, once celebrated for her professionalism and motherhood, had transformed in a matter of minutes into the perpetrator of one of the most shocking acts of marital revenge in Texas history. At trial, prosecutors painted a portrait of deliberate malice, emphasizing Clara's recorded admission that she wanted to hurt her husband. The defense argued that the killing was accidental, the product of sudden passion, claiming the car could not have been maneuvered to strike him multiple times. But witnesses, including Lindsay, testified that Clara had run over David 3 separate times, and portions of the video, combined with her police interview, revealed her rage and lack of remorse. On February 14, 2003, the day that would have marked their 11th wedding anniversary, Clara was convicted of murder under the sudden passion clause and sentenced to 20 years in prison and a $1,000 fine. During her incarceration at the Mountain View unit in Gatesville, Texas, she reportedly spent her time transcribing school textbooks into Braille. Her twin sons were raised by family friends, while her stepdaughter and David's parents filed wrongful death lawsuits, resulting in multi-million-dollar settlements. After serving 15 years, Clara was granted parole in 2017 and walked free on May 11, 2018, completing parole supervision in February 2023. She emerged subdued, yet smiling, stepping back into the world after committing one of the most infamous revenge killings in modern American history. The case left an indelible mark on public consciousness, a chilling testament to how betrayal, obsession, and unchecked rage can transform even the most familiar lives into scenes of unspeakable violence.